You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk 1150 AM. Now, back to the show with local mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell.
You are listening to the Money Hour at 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, August 20th show. You can also listen to my show podcast, Facebook premiere, or you can catch my show on my show YouTube channel. In addition, for more information on my upcoming community outreach events, you can go to tinamitchellevents.com. I am your host and local mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, and I'm here to help you build a strong financial blueprint 1 week and one show at a time. If you're hearing my show at a different time of day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but I'm here to connect you with my guest that I have on the show. Please call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150, or you can go online to themoneyhour.com. And now in studio, Cory Brewer of Windermere Property Management, Gill Associates, rental market statistics and legal updates right here on 1150 AM KKNW. And Cory, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you to hear what's happening in our local market, and especially on the legal side as well. So since the last time that you were here on my show, what's been happening?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to come on with you 3 or 4 times now, and it seems like every time my topic is the same. It's let's talk about the statistics and what's the legal update.
Well, that's an important,
yeah.
That's what everybody wants to know, right?
Yeah, there's always
it's always changing.
Yeah, there's always a legal update. I feel like a broken record here. But that's been plenty to keep us busy. We're seeing a lot more specific local regulation popping up here and there. And then, of course, things that have changed as we are, dare I say, coming out of COVID. And the temporary policies that were in place during that time. And I think last time I talked to you, I was like smack in the middle of eviction moratorium. And so we're beyond that, but we got some other stuff to contend with. Yeah.
Wonderful. So last month you completed a comprehensive analysis on rental stats for the first half of 2022. So what did you uncover through that process?
Yeah. So it was a very fast spring market. Looking back, historically, I think it was our fastest spring market in about 7 years. And so the amount of time it took for us to get a property up for lease and get it rented, very quick. Strong demand. I mentioned a little earlier, we've also now started to see some homes coming off the for sale market and turning to the rental market. And that really started to kind of accelerate in like late May. And I think you're in mortgage, you know this better than I do, but when we did start to see mortgage rates climb, it was pretty consistent numbers through April, and then May, June, July, things have changed a little bit in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Cory, how is the shifting on the home sales market affecting you on the rental side?
Yeah, similar to what I mentioned before. I think the last time we talked, there was kind of this phenomenon of people who had attempted to sell their condos in downtown Seattle. Mm-hmm. It was the summer of 2020, and that just didn't work out very well. That was the one market where people really didn't want to live. Everything else was on fire except for downtown Seattle. And so people would call us after trying to sell for a few months and ask us about the opportunity to lease those properties instead. We are now getting a little more of that in your traditional, 4-bedroom home with a white picket fence on the Sammamish Plateau type of a deal. So I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. Yeah. We're starting to get those calls.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So there's been a lot of talk about the historical high spikes in Seattle rents, specifically over the past couple of years. What is your take on that?
Sure. Well, that is very true. Rents are up. There's no denying it. This is an expensive place to live. The demand for a single family house, particularly on the east side, just skyrocketed over these last couple of years. But when you see that kind of story in the news, usually what the analysts or the authors or whoever are looking at are when we talk about rental statistics, they're generally looking at apartments. And that's a different kind of segment of the market that what we handle in our firm. And I think you really have to be careful about taking those numbers in context, because if you look at what rents looked like in the spring of this year compared to the spring of last year for apartments in downtown Seattle, yes, they took a huge jump. But relatively speaking, if you look at what the spring 2022 rental numbers looked like compared to spring of 2019, pre-pandemic, we may not have even caught up yet, because rents took such a dive that first spring of the pandemic, particularly apartments in Seattle, that while yes, we do have huge spikes, relatively speaking, let's go back to pre-pandemic, and we're probably not that far off from what you would consider normal.
Okay. That's good. It's good information. Yeah, a lot of the information, I see this in my expertise in arena, that they have, they have half the facts or half the data, which never puts the full picture together, right? So there's been a lot of news lately about different regulations passing at the city level, particularly throughout King County. So can you share some of those updates, Cory?
Yeah, totally. Again, that's one of the biggest challenges that we face in our industry. I don't know what it's like on the mortgage side, how often you have new policies to follow. In the home sales market, it's not very often when the purchase and sale contract goes through some kind of overhaul. But with the rental side, the governance of the landlord-tenant relationship changes frequently, in particular from one city to the next. And we've dealt with that in Seattle as long as I've been in the business. There's kind of been, here's the rules, and then here's the rules in Seattle, and they're different. And now we're starting to see that pop up in other places. Just in the past couple of weeks, the cities of Redmond and Kirkland passed some of their own local jurisdictional rules surrounding security deposits, for example. And now we've got a lot of different rules, and we're working on internal cheat sheets, if you will, to keep our clients, on the right track. And what's tricky about that is we do business in pretty much every city throughout King County. And so we've got several dozen potentially sets of rules to follow now. So it keeps me on my toes.
Yeah.
It's job security.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned the sale contract. I've been in the mortgage industry for 27 years, and maybe two handfuls of adjustments, if that, in the sales contract. And, some being recent, very recent, they had the additional down payment addendum, and now they're having commission, different addendum for real estate commissions on the buyer's side. So, but it's a handful, different than yours. And on the mortgage side, definitely there's some guidelines and things change. What we've seen in the recent is before the recent, some little laxing and maybe some programs coming back or coming into the market, like interest only and 40-year amortizations, now getting pulled back because of the volatility of what's been happening in the lending side. But anyways, everything's a constant change for sure, but I think it's a small portion of what you see in the constant change in your line of work, for sure. So Cory, what are some of the strategies that you've been using lately to guide your clients through the changing legal landscape?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about communication. And we have such a great team here. I mentioned the MLS a little earlier. We're pretty much far and away the number one market share on the MLS. And what that means is that our brokers and our agents here do a lot of business, and they see a lot of things, and they talk to a lot of people. And that's a lot of knowledge coming together in one room when we meet and talk about these things. And so we are able to roundtable ideas and strategies and then share that for the benefit of all of our clients. So collaboration, communication.
Yeah, very important. So what is the biggest challenge that you counter with your advocacy efforts that you're in?
Yeah, it's making a distinction between those big apartment communities and then the smaller individual we call mom and pop housing providers, which are primarily our clients, who don't have those economies of scale that the larger apartment corporations have. And being able to make a distinction between this type of a rule might work really well for this segment of the market, but it shouldn't be a blanket policy. Because the real estate is hyper local and the different property types are very individual in their ownership makeup and their priorities. There's just a lot of nuance. And I don't think that is properly recognized largely by the media and definitely not by local lawmakers.
And
so we got to get that message out there.
Absolutely. Are you saying, I mean, the mess that happened in Seattle with rental, are you seeing that is laxing in the Seattle market? Or is it still?
Can you rephrase that?
Just in really the protection of the tenant itself and all of the additional requirements that you had for.
Yeah, that whole scope of tenant protection policies, I think there are a few that can be accurately described as tenant protections, but most of them, I don't think that's an accurate way to describe it. Like, for example, there is a relatively new program that provides financial assistance for victims of domestic violence, for example. That is one that we are 100% behind. That is a protection. That is someone with a very specific need. They're in a dangerous situation. They need some help. I'm fully on board with that one. Some of the other ones, I won't get into too much detail because we don't have a lot of time, but ultimately, one of the outcomes that you can verify is that since the introduction of some of these policies, the number of available rental houses has dropped. And the city of Seattle in particular has a registry database, and you can see very clearly the thousands fewer rental houses available in the city of Seattle. And you can marry that up pretty easily with the introduction of some of these renter protection policies. So ultimately, if there's less housing to choose from, I don't think that meets that greater goal of tenant protections. If they have less to choose from and what is still there costs more.
Makes sense. All right. So what recent legal changes would you say that you are in support of, if any?
Yeah, well, there's that domestic violence one for sure.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. And generally speaking, anything with fair housing is important.
Yes.
It's actually kind of mind blowing what is allowable in some other parts of the country. I've learned. I think that we're in a pretty good spot with regard to fair housing here locally. And those are a couple examples, I think.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. So final words of advice to landlords, investors, house hunters, or anyone out there on either side of the rental housing market right now.
Anyone looking for a home, it's the middle of August while we're recording this. Hopefully not too late to find a home in the school district that you want. That's a big motivator for people when they're moving. So get that locked down before school starts. On the housing provider side, this is still such a great area for our local corporations bringing new jobs to the area. If you provide housing, there's going to be someone here who wants it. And there's lots of good, well-paying jobs in the area. People need a place to live. Such a beautiful place to live. We're in a great spot. And I foresee the future in terms of, having a good local economy and demand for people wanting to live here. It's just, we're fortunate in that way. And I think we're in a good long-term spot for sure.
So for the investor listening right now, Cory, and if you were purchasing an investment property, when you combine the opportunity of being able to get tenants in easily and balancing that out with the different laws, depending on where you're at, where would you be purchasing your investment?
Okay. So Kent and the surrounding area is on fire right now. Blue Origin is hiring, and they've got some really good jobs down in the Kent area, Covington, Maple Valley. Anything we put on in like Linwood, it goes like that. And then anything in a good school district is generally going to be very popular. But yeah, those neighborhoods that aren't quite in the central, a little bit more of an outlier. They're more affordable, and with working from home, I mean, people don't have to worry about a commute downtown so much anymore. And so there's a lot more people looking in those areas as well. So if I'm investing in a rental property, I might be looking in Linwood or Kent or something along those lines right now for bang for my buck.
Well, that's great. So if you're an
Mhm.
investor listening to the show, call the show and I'll connect you with one of the top real estate partners that I work with within Windermere, and they can help you find that investment property. Cory, thank you so much for being here. It's always great to hear an update as a leading expert in your space, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Cory.
Yeah, thank you.